ready? Says we're live, but I don't see us moving. Are we moving?
No, it's usually, yeah, I think there it goes. We're on now.
We're on now.
Yep.
Am I moving? On my screen, it looks like I'm frozen, but do you
No,
see
because I mean,
me?
there's going to be a delay. Let me turn the volume all the way down on my phone so it doesn't bleed through.
Okay.
Yep. No,
So
we're
I
good.
think we're going, and all right, all right. Well, no one's on yet, so but we're gonna let's wait a second or two and make sure we're live. And you're seated on your phone, right, Patrick?
Yep. Yeah, we're good. It shows there's two
Okay.
people, so it might be me and someone else,
Oh,
Me.
you see two people? Yeah.
or it's
Okay.
me and Lee.
Got
Okay.
ourselves a party.
All right. Okay. Well, I wonder how our volume sounds like over there.
Yeah, I heard it before I turned the volume down, so
Okay.
there is volume.
All right. Well, we'll
Well,
just
we've
have
got.
to hope maybe somebody joins, maybe somebody doesn't. The great
Well,
thing is this gets recorded for future viewing. So,
right.
all right, action. Hi, I'm Bill, and if this is the first time dropping into Astro Chat, welcome. Tonight I'm joined by my co-host Patrick Kerrigan and our guest speaker Lee Pullen. And before we get into Lee's presentation, we just want to let you know that there will be a Q&A session at the end. So go ahead and ask your questions as you have them, and then either Patrick or I or Lee will come back through and answer some of your questions. Other than that, Patrick and I are very excited to introduce Lee Pullen, Urban Astrophotography. And thanks again, Lee, for joining us this afternoon or tonight, depending on where everyone may be in the
Yeah.
world.
Oh, right.
Evening time over
Yeah.
here. Well, thanks Bill and Patrick for inviting me onto your channel. I'm excited to give you this talk this evening. The theme is cloudy skies and city lights, astrophotography against the odds. So I come from different part of the world to you. You may have guessed from the accent. I come from the UK, and even more specifically, a city in the southwest called Bristol. It's the capital of the southwest, and it's certainly the capital of light pollution. We've got terrible lights all around in my city, and I live just about where it actually says Bristol on that map, which is the worst part of the light pollution. So it's really against me where I do my astrophotography. And I do everything from my back garden, right in the centre of Bristol. And as well as having really bad light pollution, well, in the UK, we've got pretty bad weather as well. So this is just an example forecast from when I put this slide together. You can see it's not too happy. There's lots of clouds, lots of rain. So I've really got to compete with these dual aspect of really bad light pollution and really bad weather as well. They certainly combine to make things interesting, shall we say. But over the years, I've come up with a few tips and tricks that I hope to share tonight to help anyone else in a similar kind of situation to maybe overcome these challenges. So let me show you the telescope that I've used most, and until quite recently I was using this. It's an Astro FRA 400. It's quite a small little diddy telescope. Aperture is only 72 millimeters and the focal length is 400 millimeters. So it's a compact wide field refractor, but it's got quite a lot going for it. You get good image quality. It's very user friendly, easy to use, and the image quality is good. And it's very compact and it's light, even fully loaded with all the kit on. It's only about 4.5 kilograms. So you can easily lift it with one hand. And this is a photo of it in action in my back garden. And at the back there on the left, you can see that big red cylinder, and that's the camera that I use. That's a ZWO2600MC. So that's a color, one-shot color camera. And that, for some people, will be interesting anyway. the fact that I'm using an OSC camera from a city. Conventional wisdom might be that you have to go mono, but I actually use OSC. And you might just be able to see there's a filter drawer in there at the back as well. Until recently, I was using an Optolong L Extreme for narrowband targets. Nowadays, right, with my most recent images, which I'll show you at the end, I've used an L Ultimate, the latest iteration. But for most of the pictures in this presentation, it's an Optolong L Extreme. And for broadband targets, I don't use any filters at all, no light pollution filters. I did some tests with some different ones, and I found that none gave me any benefit. if this is of interest to you, ask some questions at the end, and I'll be happy to have more of a chat about that. But for now, broadband targets, no filters at all. So what kind of images can I take with a setup like this? Well, let me give you an example. A single subframe, 2-minute subframe, drum roll. Boom. Okay, we see this, which you guys can probably recognize. This is the Pleiades M45. And in a single subframe, it's not much to write home about, is it? We've got all this mucky color. This comes from all the thick sky glow. We've got a reasonable number of stars, but it's really noisy. I mean, it's not a good picture. But with the right approach and the right technique, I managed to turn this into this, which I think is a little bit better. We can see a lot more detail there. We can see some nice nebulosity.
Yeah,
those
really
stars
nice.
are coming through nicely. And just remember, this is with that small refractor, only a aperture of 72 millimeters. It's nothing really, is it? All from the center of a Bortle 8 city with a one-shot color and no filters, no broadband light pollution filters in there. So how can we do this? Because if I can do it, anyone can. I'm not a particularly good astrophotographer. I think I've just got a few different techniques that I've found combined to work quite well. So how do we get that difference between that first rubbish picture and this one that's a little bit better? Well, I think the key difference is the secret really is in integration. Because in astrophotography, we don't just take one picture and call it a day. We need to take lots and lots and lots, and we combine them all together through the process called stacking, sometimes called integration. And I wanted to do an experiment to find out how much integration time I actually needed from my city location. So I took bucket loads of data on the Iris Nebula. This is an extreme cropped in version of that. And I made integrations of 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, all the way up there to 20 hours, you can see. And the point of this was to see how much integration time do I actually need. And I could see that those first few hours, they make quite a big difference, 2, 4, 6 hours. Then after that, we're still getting an improvement, but it's like a bit more incremental, if you will. It's a bit harder to see. So what's actually happening is that the longer an integration time we get, the more we're improving our signal to noise ratio. So signal is all of the photons that we want, things from galaxies, nebulae, stars, whatever, and noise is all the things we don't want. We often think of noise as being from our camera sensors, but if you're from a light polluted city like I am, then most of our noise is actually from things like street lamps. And in this animation here, we can see what a difference that longer integration time makes. It's going up in steps of 2 hours each time. And I took this data and I plugged it into PixInsight, into what was it, the subframe selector tool. If you use PixInsight, you'll be very familiar with it. But it basically allows you to graph the quality of your data. And we got this graph here, which shows the noise level against the integration time. So I looked at this and I studied it. And I want you guys to look at it now and just think, what conclusion do you draw from this graph? Because I think that there are two conclusions that you could draw. You could look at this and say, well, you get most of the benefit around the 6 hour mark. So that's what you should aim for. Go for 6 hours and then move on to another target. But I looked at it a bit longer, saw that sure, you get the best difference here at 6 hours. But if you keep going, there's still a lot of benefit to be gained from that. So after doing this experiment, I decided to aim for very long integration times in the region of about 20 hours per target. Now, I should stress that this graph that we're looking at here is very specific to me because it's with my equipment and from my location. Everyone would have a slightly different graph, but I think the shape would be the same because your integration benefits, your signal to noise ratio follows this inverse square law. So if you were out in the countryside, you would still get the benefits from having the longer integration, but your noise level is going to be much lower to start with. So what takes me 20 hours might take you 1 hour if you're in a really, really dark site, maybe 4 or 5 hours if you're out in the countryside. So it's worth doing this kind of experiment for yourself. So I thought I'm going to aim for these long integration times for each target. But we've then got that second challenge that I face, which is the cloudy weather where I live in the UK. So how can I get that long integration time whilst also facing all of this cloudy weather? There are a few different ways to go about it. And I think the first one I want to talk about is remote automation. This is so important. Remote automation is a way of controlling all of your kit so that you don't have to physically be there next to your telescope as it's taking photos. You're not there pressing a button every couple of minutes to take another picture. You're not there with a remote shutter release. There are different ways to achieve remote automation. The one that I use that I really like is the ASI Air, and I use the Plus model. And Bill, I know you like the ASI Airs a lot as well. There are other methods. I used to hook a laptop up with Sequence Generator Pro, and I'd use TeamViewer to remote desktop onto that from my living room. So there are different ways to go about it, but the ASI Air I really like. So this allows you to get lots of data when you're not there physically by your telescope. This is super useful because if you're aiming for these long integration times, you can't be there. It just takes too much time. So through remote automation, you can be in your living room, or ideally you can actually be asleep while your kit is doing all the work. It's just chugging away, getting all that data. And remote automation also unlocks plate solving. Plate solving is the method by which your telescope can go to exactly the same location whenever you need it to, night after night after night. And that's necessary for these long integration times. So remote automation is absolutely key. And a lot of people do remote automation already. So the next thing I want to mention is the importance of having a really efficient setup and pack down procedure. So when I started out with astrophotography, doing it from a city, I think my plan was the same as a lot of people's, which was I would build a portable setup, a portable astro rig that I would take out to the countryside, to a dark site when I could, to do some imaging. But then I'd do it in my garden as well when possible. But I found that I wasn't really getting the opportunities to travel. I was just a bit too busy, real life was getting in the way. So I had this kit that was designed to be portable, but it was quite difficult to set up. So I would need to take out the tripod and then the telescope, and I would need to polar align, and that could be quite frustrating, and then get everything balanced and all set up just properly. And this would take half an hour, 40 minutes or so. I'm sure if I could get a little bit faster at it, but it would take quite a while, and it would be in the dark, and I would be cold, and it just wasn't much fun. And what I decided was to do something that's really counterintuitive and forget traveling to dark sky sites. And this is actually a bit mad, because if you go to a dark sky site, you're going to get much higher signal to noise ratio. You're going to get much cleaner data, so you have shorter integration times. But because I wasn't able to travel out, I thought, let's try a different approach. So I basically ditched the tripod and had a DIY buddy friend of mine help me build a pier in my garden. I decided to double down on being an urban astrophotographer. I wasn't going to travel at all. Everything I was going to do was going to be from my back garden. I have got one thing going for me, which, Bill, I know you don't. You've got these big trees around your observing site, don't you? Which means that you have an obstructed view. I've got some trees and some tall buildings. There are these big tower blocks that are going up near me with that light shining down into my garden. But on the whole, I've got a reasonably decent horizon. So I got this pier built, and then I saw the quality of my images just shoot up. And that's because I was able to get these really long integration times. But I think part of this is because of going back to what I was saying about that optimizing the setup. So before with the tripod, it might take 30, 40 minutes. With the pier, I've actually timed it before. I timed it quite recently. So I've looked at the weather forecast. I've seen that the skies are clear. Okay, start the stopwatch, put my shoes on, go outside, get the telescope out of the shed, put it onto the mount, which is on the pier. I've got all the electrics in a box. They live permanently there. I run an extension cable out to an outside socket, plug that in, ASI air, it's good to go. From noticing that the weather forecast is clear to imaging, 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Happy with that. And what you find is that when it's so easy to set your kit up, you're far more likely to actually do it. So let's say you're checking the weather forecast and it looks a little bit iffy. So if you've got a tripod and you have to do all the polar alignment, I can't be bothered with that. I'll wait until it's properly clear skies. But with this pier setup, I was finding that I was taking more risks with it. Okay, it might only be clear for an hour, but it's so quick to set up. Let's just go and do it. And then I would find that I was just gathering so much more data than I expected I would be able to. It's just such a brilliant setup. I really recommend getting a pier if anyone can. The telescopes I keep in my shed, which is just to the left of the picture there. And during the daytime, I put this cover over it. It's from a UK company called Astro. They're really good, like affordable covers, bespoke, made for whatever size telescope you want. I've had this for a couple of years. It's never let a single drop of water through. So I just put that over the mount and it's A-OK. And we've had some torrential downpours. It's been snowing here recently. This simple cover, it takes it all. So sure, something like a dome would be even better. But I think if you've got the right kind of setup, a simple pier like this gets you 90% of the benefits of a dome for 10% of the cost. Really cheap, really good. I love it. I love my pier. It's so good. I don't think I could ever go back to using a tripod. But let's say you can't have a pier for whatever reason. You live at the top of a tower block, whatever. It's still really worth thinking about how you can optimize your setup and your pack down to make it as fast as possible. What can you do to take that 30-minute setup down to 25 down to 20, and the benefits just rack up. You want to make things as easy as possible as you can for you. So the next trick is about planning your targets. So I use software called Stellarium. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with this. So I load up Stellarium and I look at what targets are going to be visible from from dusk until dawn. What's going to be in the sky for an entire night, so I can get every minute of photons collecting from it. But not just for one night, because I know that my imaging runs will last several weeks, possibly. So I make sure the target is still going to be in a good position in 3, 4, 5 weeks' time. And in particular, I check these little boxes. I don't know if you can see it in your screen there, for the meridian. That's the point directly overhead, because that's where you're going to get the highest quality data, because you're looking through the least amount of atmosphere. So we want to make sure that our target is passing through the meridian. So I put some time into planning which target I'm going to image. And then the last tip here I want to share with you is, I've got a picture of the moon here to represent it. It's about having the right mindset. It's about committing to imaging. Because I think that we astrophotographers can sometimes be really good at thinking of excuses to not go out imaging. Like, oh, it might get cloudy a little bit later. Oh, it's summer. I hear this one a lot. Oh, it's summertime. We don't get very dark nights. I'm not going to image until winter. And the moon. Oh, the moon is up. I don't image when the moon is up. That's what I hear people say. I forget all of that. The moon one in particular makes me laugh, actually, because I sometimes have people that are out in the countryside and they're saying, or they're advising other imagers, don't bother imaging when the moon is up. Your sky is too bright. And I'm thinking, my sky with no moon is so much brighter than your sky with a full moon. So should I never image? No, I just image all the time. To be honest, I don't even factor in what the moon is doing. The moon could be full. I'm still out there imaging. I try and boil it down into a binary decision. If the skies are clear, I'll be out there imaging. If the skies are not clear, I won't be out there imaging. For example, right now, the skies are actually clear. And in my garden, over in that direction, my telescope is out there. It's gathering photons. It's doing its thing right now. And so by following this kind of approach, I'm managing to take about 20 of these long integration imaging projects a year. It takes me about 2 to 3 weeks on average in the winter, and maybe 4 to 6 weeks in the summertime, just because of the shorter nights. But it works out in the end about 20 projects, 20 really good images every year is what I manage to do, which I think is pretty good going, actually. Just have to commit to it. So let's think about some of these images that I've actually managed to take then. So this Pleiades, the one that we looked at the beginning, that was a 22-hour integration. And you might think, oh, does it take up loads of your life? It's like such a long amount of time to do it. But actually, this particular one was taken over the course of 15 consecutive nights, so just over 2 weeks. Most of that, it was completely cloudy, so there was only a few clear nights. And if you were to tot up all the amount of time where I'm actually doing something, so out there setting kit up or taking it down, about 45 minutes, I think. The 45 minutes of work, me being active in order to gather enough data for this image. And another reason this one is interesting is the fact that almost all of that time there was a really bright, almost full moon that was up in the sky close to it, very bright moon. But with the right approach, it doesn't matter too much. Don't stress about the moon, I guess, is my main message for this. All right, let's take a look at some other pictures. We have IC1396, which incorporates the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. This was taken with an Optolong L-Extreme filter. And this, I think it was actually my longest imaging project in terms of like calendar time. It was about 6 weeks, I think. And that's because it was in the height of summer, but we don't really get much darkness at all. But it's fine. Even in twilight, I'll be out there imaging, and well, the results, they can be just fine, can't they? NGC 7822, 20 hours into this. It's a faint object, so it's not often imaged. I don't see too many wide field images of this one either, which I think is a shame, because there's that nice swooping area over there on the left. I think it's kind of neat. And the Lion Nebula, 28 hours into this one. I want to reprocess this one, actually. I think that we've got new techniques, and I could do a better job now of controlling the stars. And you guys know what it's like when you've got an image, all you can see is the faults in it. So I see a lot of faults in this one. But still, you know, the Lion Nebula, Optolong L-Extreme from a city centre, 28 hours, boom, it can be done. Well, talking of faint objects, the Flying Squid Nebulae, I mean, legendarily faint, I think. Most people, I think it's fair to say, most images would assume you need dark skies and a mono setup and like really expensive filters to do this. But hey, this is with a 72mm refractor, a really small portable thing, Optolong L-Extreme filter, just plowing away at it for a couple of weeks to get 28 hours. Being clever in the processing as well. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But look, it can be done. Can be done. What about the Shark Nebula? This is one that I know some people travel out into the desert to try and image because it's so faint. But this, well, 20-hour integration, one-shot color camera, no filters. Just that long integration time plowing away. And sure, the image quality isn't great. There are a lot of pictures out there of this object that are a lot better. But considering all the constraints that I've got, I mean, I was quite happy with it. Maybe I'll come back to it and do a better job sometime. And then we've got the Crescent Nebula, these like amazing hydrogen clouds there. Optolong L Extreme again help to bring out some of the oxygen. You can see, if you can see my mouse cursor just to the top of the actual crescent.
Yeah,
Hey, that's kind of neat. I was happy to be able to get that through. And even just when I was processing this, I noticed actually I managed to also capture the soap bubble, which is a very faint planetary nebula. I got it, yay. One of the things I really like about these long integration. Yeah, but the longer your integration is, it's like the deeper you can see. And often only when I'm processing the images do I see these little things, and then I try and look up what they are. You get that sense of discovery of what it is. Like, oh, it's a planetary nebula, it's a faint little galaxy. I had no idea it was there. So long integration is really important, but it's not just about getting a long integration, because you need quantity, but you also need the quality. So how do you make sure you get that? Well, I actually, I say I aim for about 20 hours per target. The truth is, 20 hours is what goes into my end product, 20 hours more or less. I actually aim to capture about 30 hours of data per target. And why do I capture that much more? Because I'm quite particular about what goes into my image stack. So I use PixInsight, as I've mentioned before, and I really like the subframe selector tool. So I'll put my 30 hours of subframes in there, and I will graph the quality of the data. And I will then use 2 criteria to whittle down the data to make sure I've only got the stuff that I think is really good. So the criteria I use are stars. So PixInsight will just measure, it'll count how many stars are in each image. And if there aren't enough stars, then that's an indication that maybe there was something like cloud going over at that point. If there aren't enough stars, cut. And I also use FWHM, full width half maximum, which is basically a measure of how sharp the stars are. So if the full width half maximum measurement is too high, then I'm going to have blurry stars. Don't want that. Cut them. And it just so happens that it tends to be that I'm cutting about 1/3 of my data. So I aim for about 30 hours, end up with about 20 hours, give or take.
So now real quick, where's like your limit when you're doing full width half maximum or stars?
Yeah,
do you use like the gradient part on that scale?
Yeah, it's a good question. So normally it's kind of obvious where the outliers are, because there'll be a cluster that's really good.
Right.
You want clusters that are really good, but if there's a cluster that's really bad, then you start to see the matrix code. You say, oh, okay, that was probably when some cloud went over. So generally, by taking out those clusters, that whittles it down quite a bit, and then I just kind of cut a little bit more and try to get them kind of close. But I don't have a particular like formula that I apply to it. I kind of play it by ear a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. And there are other things in PixInsight that are really useful. I use the weighted batch pre-processing function, which is just amazing. I plug all the data in there, and PixInsight chugs through and squeezes out all the signal and tries to get rid of as much noise as it can. But it does take a long time. I've got a fairly powerful computer. I've got like 48 gigabytes of RAM in there. But even then, my integrations are so long. I've got so many subframes going in there. You can see at the bottom left, actually, in this particular example, 15 hours and 20 minutes it took to run through that, just to take all the subframes and produce one integrated image. So I leave this going overnight, and my longer ones can take 24 hours easily. But it's worth it. And then there's other things in processing, like the noise reduction, new algorithms like Noise Exterminator. I find to be very effective. So we can see a before and after there. I don't want to take out all the noise, because a little bit of noise is good. I think our brains interpret that as sharpness. But using tools like this, it's another tool in our armory to help us to produce better images, even if we've got like quite a bit of noise in there. Because with the best will in the world, even my 20 hours of integration from a city, there's still going to be a lot of noise in there. And there are other tools as well, like the dynamic background extraction. people much cleverer than I have written really good tutorials on to help get rid of those light pollution gradients, and I use that. Although, to be honest, I have quite a lot of success with the automatic background extractor function in PixInsight. I set the function selection to 2 and set it to subtract, and I'll like ping that over. And like a lot of the time, maybe I should pretend I spend ages on dynamic background extraction getting it. I just run automatic background extractor, and 10 seconds later, it's done it all for me. Thank you, PixInsight. So I just wanted to finish this bit of the presentation really by talking about my latest telescope, because that little ASCAR FRA 400 I've used for all the images up to this point in the presentation. But a couple of months ago, I bought the big brother, the ASCAR 130. So this is a 130mm refractor with a focal length of 1 meter, 1,000 millimeters. And this is the one that's out in my garden at the moment that's imaging. So let's take a look at some images with this one. So this is just a single 2-minute subframe. I always shoot 2-minute subframes. Well, pop quiz question. Name this deep sky object. What do you guys think it is?
Looks like Andromeda.
Boom! You got it. We integrate to 10 hours.
With a dust mote right there in the middle.
Yes. This is the result I got. Just after 10 hours, actually, I was pleased with this. It's a short integration time because I was writing a review of the telescope, so I needed to get some images to accompany that review. And so the fact that I got a good result with 10 hours makes me think maybe with this new equipment I need to rerun that previous experiment with all the different integrations just to see how much of a difference it all makes. But anyway, remember, 10 hours, this is with one-shot color camera and no filters, because this is a broadband target.
Really nice.
No filters at all. Okay, let's try another one. What about this? Name this deep sky object.
Looks like the elephant trunk.
Ooh, 2 for 2, Patrick. Good.
Yeah, it was the eye right there. Gave it away. Yep.
And about this particular target, I always try to look for these stars here. If you can see my mouse cursor, make sure those two are separated. It means you got some good data there. This was 22 hours. This was a combination of different dual band filters actually that I will plug together. And I got one more for you. What about this one?
Oh, unless that's the ghost of Cassiopeia, I don't know.
You're going to kick yourself, Patrick. What have you got in your background right now?
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah. Okay, now I see. There's the heart right there in the middle.
It's the Heart Nebula. Yeah. And drum roll, this is a world exclusive. No one's seen this picture yet. This is the Heart Nebula. This is a 24-hour integration. And the reason this one is special is because this I was actually taken using some new filters that ASCAR have produced, and they sent to me to test. This is the D1, D2 filters. So the D1 is like a regular dual band filter, so hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3, and the D2 is a sulfur 2, oxygen 3. So you take those two filters, you use them to get all your data, and then you splice out the channels and you create an SHO and do mono processing. So this is actually a one-shot color camera image, but with some genuine sulfur data, not just a kind of a bodged pseudo sulfur channel that I often use, and I know other people do as well. So to summarize, cloudy skies and city nights. If you want to beat those city lights, you need long integration times. If you're using an OSC camera that I love so much, you need to use dual band filters for narrow band targets. If you're using broadband targets, my personal usage, I don't use any filters at all, keep it nice and simple. And you need good processing skills. I think that processing skills are as important as everything that comes before it, all that data acquisition.
Yes.
It's a hammer and nails approach. You need the processing skills and the good data. And to beat cloudy skies, you need that efficient setup and pack down procedure. I really recommend a pier if you can possibly do it. It doesn't need to cost much. A couple of concrete blocks will do the job. And you need to be committed. You need to have the right mindset. You don't think of excuses to not go out imaging. If the photons are falling, you need to be collecting them. And if you follow all of that, then, well, the sky is your oyster. And that's the end of my presentation.
Excellent. We have a question from Simon Thompson. I believe he's outside Perth, Australia, and he's asking about the pier.
Yeah.
Is that pier just on a paver, or is there a concrete base under the paver?
Yeah, so there's a concrete base under there. My DIY skills are okay, but not great. So I had a DIY buddy help me make it because I wanted to get it just so. So he built the concrete base, and then there are these concrete blocks. Those two hollow concrete blocks go into it, and those are glued together and bolted together as well. And then you need an adapter plate that goes on the top of it. You need to buy those. That's the most expensive single part. I think it's about £100, so $120 or whatever it would be for you guys. And you get those that are specific to which mount head you're using. So when I had it originally, it was for an Orion Sirius EQG, which is like an HEQ5, and now I have an EQ6R. But fortunately, that particular plate had the right holes in so that you could actually flip it over and it could go from one mount to the next. So it's not that complicated really to do, and it doesn't need to cost loads. So yeah, but to answer that particular specific question, yes, there is a definite concrete base in there that keeps it all nice and stable.
So the one question I have, never having worked with a pier, then there must be some adjustment at the top that lets you get it all level?
Yes, yeah, there are.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some little bolts, nuts and bolts in there that you can just tweak just a little bit to make it all nice and flat.
Yep. All right, let's see.
Yeah, I made my pier out of a steel pipe that I cemented in the ground with a brake rotor on the top.
Yeah.
And the brake rotor hole is the perfect size for the EQ6R.
The universe provides.
So, yeah, oh yeah, and that brake rotor I think was $11. So I think I got about $50 in mine with 2 bags of concrete and steel pole and a brake rotor.
Best $11 you've ever spent on this
hobby.
I bet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think the longest time was just looking through parts trying to find the rotor with the right size hole in it.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
So just on the pier, the person that asked the question before might find it interesting that I got the idea and the general schematics from the plan from a YouTuber called Astro. So if you search that, and there's a little, she does a talk through of her pier, and I saw that and liked it and thought, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna nick that idea.
Lee Simon's asking, he missed the first part of the presentation. What part of the UK?
I'm from Bristol, yeah, which is in the southwest.
Southwest. I think that does it for the moment for any questions. You know, the whole time I'm sitting here, I'm like squirming in my chair because I realize I've really not committed myself to trying to get the most out of my backyard. And what you have given me is a roadmap that, you know, I'd really rather not travel to a dark site at the end of the day. So I think in 2023, I'm going to put a bit more effort in. And my one issue right now is I don't have a pier, so maybe that's something I can do. But at a minimum, I could set up my tripod. My thing is the security of the gear, leaving it there day after day. You know, so that's why I've been breaking it down and bringing it in. So I'll have to sort that out. But I really think if I use the tools that you showed, Stellarium, which I already use, and I already have my Horizon, I think I could put more effort into finding targets that will be in my field of view and imaging them over multiple nights, especially when I don't have to deal with the weather that you have to deal with. So I'm a little bit embarrassed in a sense, but on the other hand, I'm very excited because this presentation has helped me understand where my opportunity is to get more from my backyard.
I think it's a difference between beginner astrophotographers and more intermediate to advanced. I think the difference is that beginner astrophotographers often tend to try and fit as many targets into a night as they can, whereas more advanced astrophotographers try to fit as many nights into a target as they can. Although I know some really good astrophotographers that just enjoy hopping around and like challenging themselves to get a lot into a night. But for the the good clarity and the quality and the good signal to noise ratio, you need that integration time. I think it gets easier the more you do it, because you find it's a bit addictive. You think, oh, I just want to get one more night into this, one more night. And the better your signal to noise ratio is, the easier you'll find your processing. So there are definite benefits.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it
I don't
seems
know,
like the
there's a-
integration. The
Okay.
integration is always the easy part for me. It's the processing. It's my challenges, because I'm set up on a pier and we have a lot of clear nights, so I'm imaging almost every night. Every night it's clear, even if it's going to be cloudy. I still image. If I just have to throw away 5 or 6 hours, then throw it away. But at least I got those 2 or 3 good hours that I can put in the mix.
Yeah, and you get to a point where you've optimized your imaging rig, you've got the remote automation sorted. Like, you don't need to do anything else to it. It's just it's running there every night, like you say, Patrick. And then just don't get distracted by buying new things. Like, put the time into learning the processing.
Good information. So I don't know. Do you see that question, Patrick, from High Bidder? What make auto rotor did you use for what?
What brake auto rotor? I think I have a picture of it, so I can put it up, or I'll send it to you, Bill, so you can put it up somewhere, or on the Facebook. If you go on the Facebook group, I'll post a picture of the part number under Astro Vagabond.
And then someone Astrophoto Andy said Blue Exterminator is really good as well. I think that was in reference to maybe one of the noise.
Is that Blur Exterminator?
Yeah.
So
Blur. Yeah.
That was released very recently, just a few days ago, I think. And I watched a lot of videos, and you see the before and after, and it's an amazing difference. I got to be honest, I've tried it, and it's tightened the stars up nicely, but I haven't seen that much improvement in my nebulosity. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, or if it's just not optimized for my kind of setup, or what. So I definitely want to play about with it more, but I haven't seen like night and day difference with Blur Exterminator.
Right. So I watched the Adam Block one, and he says if you're looking at the full picture of it, you're not really going to see the detail. If you're he said if you're zoomed in at 400, then you should be seeing some difference.
I watched the same video. The difference was so minor. That's why I think that it's the fault probably lies with me, because everyone else is getting such good results with it. So I need to go back.
I know it's Facebook is flooded with them.
Robert Moore says, "Wonderful presentation, Lee. You're getting many comments," and he says, "Thanks for inviting me." So
thanks
to you. And then Patrick High Bidders again asking, was it for use with the EQ6R Pro? So
yes, and actually have. Let me see if you can see that on there. Oh, well, it's going to disappear. You can get disappeared again. But anyway, so I got the picture. So
we'll drop it in somewhere. I'm going to probably take this video and edit it and package it as a standalone video. And then Lee, for those that might have come late, how long have you been doing astrophotography? In case they missed that on the front end.
Oh goodness. Well, let's see. I think like 2014, I was taking my first proper steps, and then but it's been on and off. I've had a few breaks and things, but like properly really trying for the last couple of years.
All right, let's see what else we got going on here. I think that's about. Anybody have any additional questions before we start to wrap up with Lee? So we'll give him some time for the cause of the delay to respond.
So do you always do 2-minute exposures? Because I'm pretty much the same light pollution areas. I'm Bortle 8-9. I'm just outside of Los Angeles. So you always do just 2-minute exposures?
Always 2 minutes, never any more, never any less. Always 2 minutes, always gain 100 on my camera. Never change those settings. Just makes everything easy.
Gotcha.
Is the 100 the default gain for that camera?
Yeah, that's like the magical gain where the noise level is optimal.
Yeah, I've been kind of leaving the gain at the default in a sense, in a sense for the camera. two cameras that I use, so I know some people move around with
Yeah.
those settings.
Yeah,
But
because
I
I
don't know
mostly
enough
shoot
yet.
mono, but just got a one-shot color 2600, so I'm gonna start using that one.
Yeah.
Mainly got it for my out of town rig, but I think I'm gonna start using it here too.
And another thing, Lee, you just convinced me to keep my 533 MC Pro. So that'll just save me some money, and I really haven't exercised it as much as I should. So I'm gonna keep that. So this has been a very insightful presentation.
I'm all for saving money, or even more specifically, I would say spending money where you're going to get the most bang for your
Right.
buck.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that sometimes people can spend money on the wrong thing. So what's actually going to make it easier for you to get imaging, to get those long integration times? That's why things like the Pier are so good. Like, don't go out and buy that extra fancy filter necessarily. Like, put the money into a Pier instead. Like the broadband light pollution filters that I don't use. Like, if you're on a really tight budget, what do you choose, a broadband light pollution filter or a Pier? Like, Pier, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So Calreg Moose says, sorry if this was answered already, just joined. I live in Bortle 89. What is a good light pollution filter to start off with? Oh, his name is Carter. So I think you had mentioned for broadband you don't use filters.
Yeah, so I guess that we need to split our filter talk. And on your channel, you had a good presentation about filters not long ago. I was watching it the other night. So I don't want to retread all of that. But basically, you've got your two types of targets: your broadband targets, things like your galaxies, your stars, and then you've got your narrowband targets that are often hydrogen-rich nebulae. And you're going to want different filters based on what those are. So for broadband targets, that's those galaxies and stars, I tested a few different light pollution filters and found that none of them actually gave an appreciable improvement to my signal to noise ratio, to my data, and some of them were actually detrimental. So since I did those tests, I have not used any broadband light pollution filter at all. I just use raw integration time. Now, I'm not saying that all broadband light pollution filters are useless. By no means. Some people get really good results with them and swear by them, and I believe those people. I just think that it's very dependent, that their effectiveness of a broadband light pollution filter is very dependent on the equipment that you're using and your local sources of light pollution. Are they sodium lamps, LED lights, how much of it, whatever.
Right.
So I'm very skeptical of any like strong recommendation for a broadband light pollution filter. You must get this, you must try this, because it may well be perfect for the person that's recommending it, but for you it might actually be worse than no filter at all. Mm-hmm. So really what you need to do is get a number of these broadband light pollution filters and give them a go and try and be as scientific as possible about it and see, are any giving you a benefit? What I would really steer away from is simply buying one, even an expensive, like really pricey one from a reputable company, and simply assuming that it's going to give you a benefit, because it might not. So for broadband filters, get a load, test them. If you can't get a load and test them, don't worry about it. Long integration times are good, processing is all you need. That's all I do. For your narrowband targets, it depends whether you're OSC or mono, but I'm going to assume you're OSC because that's what I've been talking about so far. Broadband light pollution, your dual band filters are very effective. At the moment, the best one I've tried is the Optolong L Ultimate. That's very, very good. ASCAR is sending me their 3 nanometer version, so like their competitor with the Optolong L Ultimate. So I'm going to give that a test, and I'll write a review of that to see if it's any good, to see if it's better. But so far, that Optolong L Ultimate is really good. But also these ASCAR filters that I mentioned near the end for my Heart Nebula filter, I've got a review that I'm writing at the moment that I'll be releasing on my website for that shortly, which I haven't plugged, have I? My website is urbanaastrophotography.com.
Yeah, we want to plug that. I want to put a link in the video description, of course, for those that may view this later. And maybe I have to wait for your review because I was going to ask you when it comes to the S2 filter. I think you said that you use with the dual band. How do you determine your integration time for each filter? Is there a ratio or just trial and error? Or
Yeah, so for my tests, I just tried to keep it even. So
okay.
For that Heart Nebula, it was 12 hours with the D1. That's the D1 filter. That's the hydrogen alpha and O3, and 12 hours with the D2. That's the sulfur 2 and oxygen 3. Maybe there's a better way of doing it, but just for my tests, I was keeping it simple.
And are those filters already commercially available? And if so,
They are.
How are they competitively in cost to some other filters?
In the States, I think it's $549 for the pair, if memory serves. In the UK, £630 for the pair. So they're not cheap, and you have to think about whether getting those is the right decision for you. Do you want that genuine sulfur data, or do you actually want to stick with a regular hydrogen alpha O3 filter and make the pseudo sulfur channels?
Yeah, right now I'm just using the L Extreme, and I think the other thing, you just saved me some money tonight, because right now I have a filter drawer on my Zenastar 61 because I moved my filter wheel and everything over to my HD, and so hey, just work with the filter drawer, and at some point, if I want that S2, based upon what targets I might be wanting to capture, then I can make that decision and just change the filters out. It's not really that hard. So, boy,
yeah, just a filter
I'm
drawer.
saving money tonight.
Good. Well, by law, you're now obliged to send me the money that you've saved.
Right. Well, at least I'll get you a pint or something at a minimum. But
buy yourself a beer first.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right. I think we just got that. Oh, and all right. I think that's about it. Now, any last minute questions, Patrick? Any additional stuff?
No, I think we're good. I think we're pretty much on the same page of everything. I was agreeing with a lot of everything you said.
Okay. And then Lee, aside from making sure that we make highly visible urban astrophotography, your site and everything, you want to maybe just leave any beginners that might be viewing with 3 tips?
3 tips. I would say make it as easy as possible as you can to collect data. So don't get complex setups. Just make things easy for yourself. Remember that processing is very important. Don't neglect that. But the final tip, and the most important one, is to make sure that whatever you're doing, make sure that you're having fun, because this hobby should be fun. And if you find yourself going down a particular route and you're just having a miserable time, like it's not worth it. Find a different approach. Find what brings you joy in the hobby.
All right, and on that note, I had a lot of fun doing this Astro chat with you and Patrick, and definitely I'm walking away energized with some new ideas how to better commit myself to get more from my backyard. So for that, I appreciate you taking the time, Lee. And I know I am going to do what I can to point people to this video, because I think if they're on the front end of their journey and they're thinking about imaging in the urban environment, you have basically created the pathway for them to reach success. And I think it's very important for them to hear this perspective. So other than that, any last minute, anything from anybody?
Yeah, no, great presentation.
Thank you. It's been good fun. Enjoyed it.
All right, and
you,
for
Lee.
those of you that may be viewing this video now, or maybe viewing it later, wherever you may be in the world, thank you for dropping into the channel and spending some time with Lee, Patrick, and myself. If you are aware of beginners at the front end of their journey, please take some time, and they want to be in urban astrophotographer, point them to this video so they get the benefit of the information that Lee shared with us tonight. And then other than that, clear skies.
Yep.
Till next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Great job.
See ya.
Bye.
Let's see. So this is the part we always have trouble with, is turning it off.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna, hopefully it's all been said. Okay, I see me
Yeah.
waving my hands. There's the bye. All right, I'm gonna hit the end stream now. Hopefully everything goes. All right, guys.